Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and distinguished guests. My name is Alyssa Robb, and tonight I want to share with you a story about my life and suicide loss. This happened 2 years ago while I was a sophomore in college, and I lost someone very, very close to me to suicide. In these two pictures behind me, you'll see myself and my older cousin, whose name is Kayla Cash. She lived until she was 22 years old when she unfortunately decided to take her own life. And it rocked my world forever. The hard truth about suicide is that as of 2013, suicide is the 10th leading cause of death among young adults and adolescents. It's the 11th leading cause of death among all Americans, but especially among these young people. It's an epidemic that is really affecting all of us. After cancer and heart disease, suicide accounts for more years of life lost than any other cause of death. This means that besides cancer and heart disease, suicide takes the lives of people much younger than any other disease, accidents, or any other causes of death. So we have an epidemic where people's lives are ending much too soon, and it's something that needs to be stopped. The first step towards prevention, obviously, is awareness and educating yourselves on how you can prevent suicide. 90% of all people who die by suicide have a potentially treatable mental illness or disease that goes unnoticed or untreated. This information comes from the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, an organization I've had the distinct pleasure of working alongside of for the past 2 years since my cousin's death. They present many facts and figures about suicide and urge us to educate ourselves about suicide and take that step towards becoming a solution to the problem. The risk factors for suicide fall into 3 different categories, and those are mental health conditions, environmental factors, and historical factors. Some of those mental health conditions include depression, which we've talked about previously tonight. Environmental factors include access to firearms and drugs. People who have access to these ways of taking their own life are much more likely to do so than somebody who might not have access to these things. Historical factors such as family history play an enormous role on the possibility of somebody committing suicide. If there's a family history, unfortunately, your risk at suicide is a little bit higher than the normal populations. To take that step towards education, you need to understand what the warning signs are for suicide, because so often somebody will take their life and the families and the friends of that person will look back and understand that hindsight is 20/20, and they see those warning signs after the fact. But we need to educate ourselves and understand what those warning signs are ahead of time. The American Foundation for Suicide Prevention posted on their federal website that people who take their own lives often exhibit 1 or more warning signs through what they say or what they do. And some of these warning signs include the way a person is acting, their behaviors, talking, the things that they say to their friends and family, and their mood. These behaviors might look like they're being risky. They're taking more chances than they might normally take. They might say something like, "I want to fall asleep until I feel better." And their mood drastically changes. You might see these people become disinterested in the things that they once loved doing. And this is a huge warning sign that that person might be thinking about committing suicide, or there's something going on in their mind that just isn't right. What should you do if you start to find these warning signs or see them in the people around you? The first thing that you should do, obviously, is to find help. And one thing that I'd love to tell you today is that you can find help in more places than you can imagine. Listed on my slide here is the number for the suicide prevention hotline. This is a number I keep in my phone, and I can send to somebody who I think is in a time of crisis. On top of that, there are psychiatric hospitals in the area. There's one right across the street from here. And what lots of people don't understand is that even our local hospitals have an area in their emergency rooms where you can walk in with a person who you think might be having suicidal thoughts, and they can be seen by a psychiatrist in that very emergency room. One of the things that you can also do with somebody who you think might be considering suicide is to use sensitive language. If you're talking to that person one-on-one, you want to be very careful about the things that you say. And according to the frequently asked questions on the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention's website, one of the main things that you never ever want to do is to say that any suicide is a success. This is one of the largest verbal mistakes that so many of us make. If you know somebody who has committed suicide in the past, I urge you not to say that that suicide was a success, because there is no such thing as a successful suicide. Someone who has committed suicide in the past has completed the action. They've not been successful in doing so. You can get involved in suicide prevention by going to the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention's website and by utilizing the counseling center at your local university or any of the other different outlets they have for you on campuses. The American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, in particular, has hundreds of different resources that will help you understand suicide, prevent it, be able to cope with suicide loss, just like I had to face 2 years ago. It presents lots of research studies and will provide you with lots of facts to be able to use when you're speaking about suicide to other people. And it tells you about advocacy and public research. So one thing I'd like to leave with you all today is the end to my story. I lost my cousin 2 years ago because she felt like the weight of this world was just too much for her to handle. And unfortunately, I did not see those warning signs before I lost her. So I urge you to educate yourself, find out what those warning signs are, and become a part of the solution. Use sensitive language. Reach out to those who you think might be considering suicide or those who might have a mental health condition. Because it's one thing to talk about it, but it's another thing to become a part of the solution and to save someone's life. Thank you.